There's common debate points, which exist in coaching today. And then there's the case study, which will look a little bit about how they coach and develop players in Croatia. And we'll see how you can apply that theory in reality. So first of all, developing skillful players. So the first thing that we need to know is that humans are not good at multitasking. So working memory and attention is limited. The front part of the brain is the part which is the most limited. That's the conscious part of the brain. So it's interesting that if you look at the research, there are more accidents caused on the road and more serious accidents caused on the road by people who are using their phone while driving than there is by people who are drunk and driving. So multitasking is something that humans generally are not very good at because there's limited attention and limited working memory at the front part of the brain. And that's something that we need to bear in mind when we come to skill development, because when you start to develop a skill or a technique on the early stage, it takes a lot of the attentional resources in your brain to focus on just controlling the body in a way that you can perform the technique correctly. However, by the time that you've become an expert in that technique, you can perform that skill with relatively no activity on the front part of the brain. That means that all the work has gone to the subconscious back part of your brain, which is much larger, able to process much more information, store much more information, and also to operate much quicker. So there's two parts of the brain, the front part, which is limited, and the back part, which is much bigger in its ability to store information. And when you learn a skill, you start off at the front part and eventually you move it to the back part of the brain. So how do we know that that happens? Because I know that there's some debate these days about whether that's still the case or really the case. Well, actually, we have hard evidence. So brain scans show that the type of brain waves which are emitted goes from very active to quite relaxed, depending on the performance level of the athlete. So if you get a black belt to do a karate kick, then you'll see very relaxed brain waves when you do the brain scan during the technical performance. But if you bring a novice and instruct them to do the karate kick, then you'll see that there's a lot of activity going on because they really have to focus on how they control their body. And there's more research which is called dual task, which essentially is research where they ask somebody to perform the technique and at the same time solve another puzzle, for example, a mathematical puzzle. And again, we find that novice performers of the technique, they struggle to do anything else at the same time, but expert performers of the technique are able to solve additional problems.